was reading. What was I reading? That about fascism and Donald Trump. I need to actually. Um, but that's not what I was really. What really bothered when they're talking about. I was reading 538 on why today why Biden's approval rating got so low, and it all has a lot to do with Trump, a lot to do with his hold on the Republican Party with his lies, his actual disinformation, and knowledgeable disinformation. And he has 80% of the Republicans believing it was stolen, and he keeps them in a fear state. And it's really hard. I was just dealing with the minor celebrity that and drug dealer and the trust funder that Kathleen Kennedy is protecting. Or my hypothesis is she'll probably throw them under the bus quickly if she even thinks that I'm coming or thinks that I'm able to show what she doesn't realize I can. And many people are starting to realize I can, and that's what makes me exceptionally dangerous. It's the reason I don't believe I'll survive this. History has shown people like me with my abilities do not live. But the the um, the same thing has happened. They are codependent. This person's codependent. The person with heart is considered weak, but then they tell them that they're not weak. But when they, in reality, he thinks his supporters are idiots. Trump does, but he can't live without them, which is all of his bluster. He's basically a wuss of the highest and lowest degree. So today I just wanted to get back to Mansion and Cinema tomorrow. I don't want to. There, there. I have to do more research for my hypothesis. But the things that need to be taken care of, as you know, is filibuster reform, and those two are holding it out because they're basically Republicans, and you need to quit viewing them as Democrats. West Virginia is lost. Just assume it's not there and start looking for other options to gain three more seats. The racism and that they're just hammering upon, that 45 is hammering upon, is ridiculous. He just keeps hammering their amygdala and keeping them afraid, and then they get to feel big and superior when they really are feeling really small inside. That was the back as I was looking at this. That's the whole the redneck thing. Even though they're a redneck, I don't really call rednecks racist. I mean bigots. You know, that comes to another thing that the admiral's doing. So there's a couple other things I don't want to disclose at this point, to where network effects were trying to ingrain himself into the networks or disrupt my own networks. But all under the guise of working for with the vice president and Kathleen Kennedy, who's basically a bigot herself, because she had, just by her actions, her actions are actions of bigots, and it shouldn't be said in polite company. But you know what? We don't. The country's about to turn into a freaking fascist state unless we can stop this, and that means impeaching Trump, and he has to keep the the base all riled up to protect himself, because it's really all about fear. Also, the $3.5 trillion infrastructure package has to go through, because once that goes through, and then you get voting rights through, the voting rights is almost the most important part, because it will be able to stop Trump, stop this insanity of fascism. But if voting rights don't get through, we can see that a lot of, just like yeah, Jim Manchin and Chuck Grassley of Iowa was saying something that was absolutely insane. Well, that Trump was listening to his advisors. He didn't listen to his advisors. His advisors had to quite literally stop him. That's not listening to your advisors. That is, we're going to make it worse if you do this, not that we're stop, not that you're listening to us. And that goes back into something. It also tells me what their argument is going to be. Well, they didn't do this. Well, they did that. In the law, there's three things in the law. You have if you look at the law from this perspective, you have the Constitution, which is like a table. Then you have the letter, which would technically be kind of the Constitution, if we're looking at the very basis. The spirit, and then the precedent. What Chuck Grassley was saying was, oh, he didn't break the letter, but the spirit didn't matter. And then they'll turn around and argue the spirit. That's their whole thing now with that they're going to try. The Republicans more than likely will try to impeach Biden if they win the midterms. They I don't know what the frack happened to the Republican Party. I guess it's just too much of the old Dixiecrats combined, and then big money is like, well, well, we're still making money, I guess, which is the same crap they said in Nazi Germany. But basically, they're going to attack the spirit of law, and it brings me back to something that I've realized what Mitch McConnell has been doing for decades. On the dollar bill, it says New Order Secularum, New Secular Order. But then in the 50s, they put in God We Trust, the non secularist. So they're saying, implicitly saying that we're not a secular country when we are a secular country, and we're a secular country in spirit and by letter. And what has been going on over these generations is the non-secularists are trying to destroy and turn it into, quite literally, the Handmaid's Tale. The evangelicals and the like. Nothing against evangelical thinking, but it's been bastardized to turn into just purely hatred and the lowest form of humanity in many ways. And it's sad because a lot of things within evangelical Christianity, even though there's a lot of fire and brimstone, there's a lot of good in it. It's just not my type of tea. But where they lose it is when they start saying, just as all religions, and this religion is the state religion, and that's the reason we didn't have a state religion. And you can see what's going on with the state religions. Putin did that with the Russian Orthodox Church. You're seeing that with Orban. He even said that, did several in his interview with Tucker Carlson. There was lots of dog whistling, especially towards that last third, where he's doing dog whistles to the Christian right of America, and then thanking Putin and us for protecting. So he's just playing both sides on that. So what I'm saying is McConnell has been he does this thing with using the filibuster illegally, which shouldn't be used the way it shouldn't be used. It shouldn't even exist. But the way he's using it, especially now, whereas as opposed to being the last moral stand of an argument, what they're doing is they just use it to just shut everything down. And I realized something with Mitch McConnell. He's attacking the spirit of the law, and then he's filling up all of these judgeships. When you think about it, if you have the law, it's written, but then you don't have the spirit of the law, or you only say is one side of the law, then when the first judge creates precedent, they could, or the second or third, in creating these precedents. Well, there's only one part. There's no spirit. All it is this one side of the law. So since there was no quote a debate, there's no the law is only whatever. If it was the Democrats, say for instance, and then a Republican appointed judge got in, then they would then say, well, this is what the spirit is, since there's only one side of that spirit. He's been destroying the Constitution and destroying the country for years. I'm really starting to think personally the whole South will rise again thing is really the animating force between for a lot of these older ones, older Republicans who are actually Dixiecrats in ideology. So, what gets me hilariously right now is about the police reform. The police unions, the police, apparently, from according to Cory Bush, they have said this is what we want. But then the Republicans in the Congress have blocked everything. And one of the things about bigotry is it's I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to explain to you. I don't have to have a conversation. You are nothing. And and then they'll say it's about, well, as say for instance then they'll it's just basically a way for the average person to think they have something without having to earn it. There's no other way of looking at bigotry, especially the way it is in the from a point of quote race, because I don't physical race or the phenotype of the genotype of being human. It's and what the thing is that's most stark about bigotry is it's not that you're a bigot or a person's a bigot or a person has those hatreds. It's bigotry is a network effect. Basically, it's a feminine effect. So the dudes going around beating their chest, they're basically chicks. Saying because they're beating their chest, saying how masculine they are. But it's bigotry is a way of it's a network. It's a network situation. So, for instance, I can say with Admiral, I know right now there's 3 or 4 other nodes that I already know that he's interfered with into my network, or persons that I would normally talk to. He has a secondary person in there affecting, so I don't trying to weasel his shit in. Because of the persons that I know, that person's from when I was a Dam Neck, the guy that was down forced for neighbor that was a neighbor 4 doors down. They all fit that same pattern. They all fit also his pattern, and they're all bigots. They were all flat bigots. Dude, I dealt with. I even stated it to him before. I said, "You're one of the, when I was in the military." I said, "You're one of the most bigoted persons I've ever met," and that was the Admiral's guy at the lowest point. And that's when he started to say, "Oh," and started saying "mighty white of you" to it, and just being overtly racist at that point, or bigoted at that point. Basically saying, "Yeah, I am." I'm like, "Okay, shoot cat," because he figured the cat's out of the bag. It wouldn't have any effect. All the things the Republicans are doing as far as stalling and stonewalling, it's the same thing they did during the EO. They're not going to show up for they're not going to show up for subpoenas, and Congress does not have to actually rely on the Justice Department. Congress can have the congressional police go down, pick up Steve Bannon, throw him in the back of a truck, and then bring him back up to Congress and put him in jail underneath. They do not need the Justice Department. It is we use the Congress uses the Justice Department to enforce the subpoenas. Specifically, it's also a way of knowing if the president's being a jerk. So all that time that last Congress was issuing subpoenas and they were just ignoring them, Congress should have had the Capitol Police go down and arrest them and then bring them in. And if the president then gotten away, or the Justice Department then got in the way of the Congressional Police Department arresting Steve Bannon or arresting any of those persons who defied the congressional subpoena, then at that point it would be obstruction of Congress, obstruction of justice. Congress needs, at this point in time, more than any time in the history of the United States, reassert its power. It has given away its power over the last 200 years to the executive, and it's now it's time that they actually reassert their power as we the people over the executive. And a part of that is because of precedent and spirit, because he broke precedent and spirit and the law. because he broke the Constitution by having his agents actually go onto the Capitol floor. So Trump's beating the drums even harder. He's going to keep hammering. He's going to try to keep escalating the yelling and the screaming, so that way Democrats won't have the backbone to impeach him. And his thing is, don't worry about impeaching him. First, impeach McConnell, because McConnell is one protecting, and as a person who probably has high on the narcissistic personality style, he expects everyone to protect him while he does all this crap, and then they look, the grift is, oh, we're all in together, when he really can't stand those people that are with him. This could be best shown, as it was said, that Ivanka is a little mini Trump. There's a story where the FBI, not the FBI, the Secret Service, needed to use the restroom. Now I know in those places, in those houses, there's multiple restrooms, and he wasn't even letting them use the out. There's probably a maid's quarters or a maid's bathroom or whatever. But what she did is she goes, well, let's go over there and defile Obama's restroom. So they went over and did that, and they're expecting to, okay, we did what you asked, but didn't realize, why would we want you to do that? Why would we now trust you for after you defiled yourself? So if you're not a person who has, if you have a person who has integrity, you expect integrity in return. If you're not a person, if your person has no integrity, such as Trump, you think people who have integrity are suckers. So in the end, the Secret Service never got the bathroom. They defiled themselves, and then they're still having these people openly say, "Yeah, Trump." It's sad the hold he has on people because he keeps them because of his cowardice, and which speaks to one other thing. The Kathleen Kennedy apparently is still, and which means vice president. You're harboring a criminal. You are protecting a criminal, and you're protecting the idea that African Americans are criminals, which is even worse because you're protected it, and you're being manipulated still by the admiral. I could see the small, um, um, and your chief of staff, Madam Vice President. You really need to quit it, but hey, you do you. I'm dead anyways. I don't need to continue on with this crap. I will take care of. I'll have do what I need to do to take care of what I need to take care of. You were, just like that minor celebrity in L.A. She was the one with the heart, but she's codependent and has no strength to break away. And she thinks that's the path that's going to bring the most amount of riches. You know, and that's not going to happen. You threatened my family, and then you had and what that thing with my family, that was a threat. That wasn't some like, oh, let's make him humanize him. No, that was a threat. I was being threatened by Kathleen Kennedy through her agent of the admiral by this asshole who's a cartel member, being backed up with a because it gives Kathleen Kennedy and this asshole cartel member power because they have a direct line to the presidency. Are you fucking stupid, man? Pardon the language, man. But you are under my employ. I'm a voting citizen of the United States of America. Whether your chief of staff realizes that or cares about it or not. I didn't ask for this. I do this because I believe what is correct and what is right. But since the Democrats don't believe, are just as bad as the Republicans and believe in what is right and having a backbone when it's necessary, there's no reason for me to have one and put my life on the line for nothing. Will you have until December 18th. Get to redo the debt ceiling. You got to get through at least voting rights and this package and this infrastructure, especially the secondary one. Powers that be are trying to actually, because without education, without these plans that are going into the Build Back Better, the child care and all the things that people really truly want and need to increase efficiency from a small business person all the way to a large business person, all because a few people want to keep everyone poor and then steal all the capital. They've been doing it since the 80s, and then it was two disconnects from productivity and capital and wages, and then there's a disconnect in after 2009 where the Fed just basically falsified our capital numbers because they kept pumping the money into the stock market, creating liquid wealth, easy to manipulate through IRAs. And now we know if the Fed pulls off and does quantitative easing, because we saw that multiple times when every time the Fed would pull back on the quantitative easing, Trump would start berating, and they would start the quantitative easing up again. And they would stop the quantitative easing. I might say I said it incorrectly. There was a point where it was like in the very beginning we said, okay, bring back the fairness doctrine of some sort. Wouldn't do it because then they might use it against us. The Democrats have, I would be real, dude. From the outside in, the Democrats have no backbone. You really don't. Minus the racism, because you're going to get a lot more pushback by showing backbone, but you'll get a lot more respect out of it as well. The debt ceiling showdown bought you time. Now the question is, what will the Democrats do with that time? You got Manchin, who is basically corrupt, from my perspective. Now that he thought originally that okay, I can work with this black guy, but what he meant is I can manipulate this guy. He had, you gets upset when I say that. His people would say bigoted things. Oh, they're not saying that. You know you meant it because when you threw that dog whistle out, he did it in anger as he was getting into the car. That was truly what he means. That's truly who he is at that moment. Miss Cinema just wants to play the I'm special, that's her, the power that's coming is the big pharma, have to be able to go to cocktail parties and hobnob. And we know that there's a very, very, very strong right leaning in Arizona, but her actions are actually making it worse. And it's not so much the right leaning because right leaning is no longer. They're just off the freaking charts, and she's protecting them because they're white. Most people, well, you're not supposed to say that, or she don't carry. No, dude, I know the behaviors. I know the subtleties of those behaviors. And most of the time, people actually tell you what the hell they're saying. That's why she hasn't said anything. Body language speaks as well. 70% of language is in body language. Micro expressions that most people cannot see. And then it gets farther than that. So, everything you do and don't do speaks us, even when you're trying to hide it. Actually, it shows up more so when you're trying to hide it. So, the main thing is you got to put police reform back up there, if possible. You have to get voting rights because if you don't have voting rights, you're not going. It's going to be very hard. And you have to impeach McConnell because the next person who gets in to the presidency who's right leaning will not give it up, and they will have legal precedent to say they don't have to leave, or at best they don't have to listen to Congress, and that means the republic is destroyed. And what usually happens after that, it becomes a urinating game between countries, and we have strongmen in Russia, China, and then as China's putting its tentacles out into South America and the rest of the world, it will start creating more strongmen authoritarians, just like Russia's doing was trying to do with the U.S. So we have a lot of work to do, and I know we can get it done, but it is terrifying because it just is. You know, old people are right. It's pretty much a bunch of old people, old baby boomers who destroyed everything that was created after World War II that they grew up in, and they said, "Oh, I wish it was go back to 1950." Everything we had in 1950s, you destroyed. They destroyed, and then bitch about wanting to go back, but they destroyed everything that was necessary for that time to be then. So now, since that structural point's gone, and they've pulled all the cash to themselves, and then they're saying, I've been watching this video, well, you're going to get all this cash when we die. So the Z's are going to have to wait until they're 40 or 50, and then they get a bunch of cash. How are they going to raise their kids? All this capital's then it's going to really, and because African Americans don't can't, because every time they get a leg up, the powers that be pull the freaking rug from underneath them on purpose by tanking the economy, sends them back down. There's not going to be any capital to be passed, and they know this. But the thing is, as you keep dumping and squeezing, increasing and squeezing more capital to the top, you destroy your own safety. And then you can ask any rich person who came from the third world or did not survive, who or was the brain drain of the third world. Most don't want to go back. Right now, Jamaica apparently is starting to make a turn, but most of them don't. And you would hear or read about persons who would sometimes go back to Jamaica from England, and then they would kill them, or that was necessary because it became the law of the jungle, and it's only now that they're coming out of it. You just keep destroying the lower classes and squeezing it, and you turn into a third world country where there's nothing, and you have to walk around. You can't walk around your own neighborhoods. You have to have police with you. You have to have, because all that's left is desperation on the lower end. But then they can always point, well, it's just those people. No, it's not those people. I can say that, for instance, Laura Bobert's little plan with her 5 gas wells, right? So she was planning on getting, apparently, she was planning on getting cash flows off of that gas well. So, but the question is, okay, you're my, like, she literally is my representative in Congress. Well, where's our cut? Where's the people's cut? Because the people weren't going to get a cut out of these gas wells, only Bobert. And that's what happens. And Trump's grift is making it worse because they say that's how business is done in the third world, maybe. Which is also topped off with the fact that the bigotry is running wild. But those are, but then, okay, these are the problems, and how do we solve it? And that's, we tell you what to do, we're helping you to do it, and you won't do it. You can't do it. You have one bigot, one say, no, I can't say it anyway. He said it. He's a bigot because when Manchin did that dog whistle, that is a blatant Blatant, old racist dog, old bigot dog whistle. You know, the dog whistle, which was means testing and work requirements, was basically they're stealing your money and they're going to be lazy. That's what those means. And you can look backwards at where they've used those dog whistles before. So you have these two people stopping the country from going forward because they're saying, well, they're doing the will of their donors. Well, their donors know that they don't have to worry about anything. So they just keep feeding Fox News and keeping the propaganda, keeping the fear in the state, keeping the racism, the bigotry, to be more precise, so they can hold on to power and then screw over their own people because West Virginia has and Kentucky have their people who don't make any money. Mitch McConnell even said, "Oh, you're going to get this money. Don't spend it." So you're basically, so he knows he's keeping his people poor on purpose. He's just a shitty human being. And then he blame it on the African Americans for stealing their money when it's them. Kentucky gets so much money from the federal government, mostly because of the military bases installations there, but yet their people are poor, and they keep voting for the poor person to help keep them poor, and that goes back into a lot of this cultural positioning of at least I'm not them, I'm only this. Meanwhile, the the meanwhile they're becoming poorer and poorer by the day and being destroyed, and they're destroying themselves. So this is a tough nut to crack because the people are in a media echo chamber. They don't want to hear anything that doesn't fit their view of things, and basically they're acting like children. If you view them as children, 3 to 4, 5 year olds, their behaviors fit almost precisely. And so 3.5 trillion dollars and quit lowering the price because you started at 6. Because if you go below 3, then they're not going to respect you. They'll think you're an idiot. They'll think Democrats are idiots. They got played. They started at 6. They gave up. They said that their value is $6 trillion, and then they gave up everything and said, "Okay, we're only worth 1.5." Bullshit. That's what you're saying when you keep giving away the farm to the Republicans, to basically a bunch of children with degrees, smart children, but children nonetheless, who aren't even caring about the rule of law. Now I know that also because I don't know where this ends up, but I do know that if one of the things I do, I have an idea where I'll go into it later because I got to write it out and make sure do more research to make sure I think the one I'm thinking fits. But that's where we're at. Cinema. Speaking of which, as I said, with she's actually her donors need to. She wants her donors. Her donors expect a say. Well, then they need to. She needs to show up to the vice president's residence and have a conversation. What do your donors want? Also, the IRA. I'll have to look that one up. They need to donate and speak with her. And then Manchin, you need to bring him to the vice president's house and have that conversation. Because as long as he doesn't have to respect the vice president, he's not going to. Either of them are, actually. Those two need to be brought. You need to. Right now, yeah. They have way too much power, and they're destroying. And they're because Manchin's bigotry is clouding his brain. Cinema's about his bigotry as well. Right? And people just say you shouldn't say this, but they shouldn't act like it. She could say it's her donors. They put that poison pill in, and it looks kind of like a Romney maneuver, actually. That poison pill with the IRAs. It looks very much like a Romney maneuver because it is very much a vulture capital style attack. You take the the asset, devalue the asset. This is also known in business schools, but vulture capital really completely hammers the asset and then sells off the asset pieces. So, anywho, that's it. And also, I need some action on that on the gang member, on the cartel member. I ain't doing this for free. He's like, oh, you're going to jail. I'm dead anyways. What's jail gonna do? Just drag it out. Because you're gonna say that I said something, or maybe I did say something from from my time when I was talking about the EO complaint, or you're gonna find something else. That's what they're trying to say. If anyone should be, it's the admiral for breaking into my computers and then disseminating my information. And then I'm going to find out and work my way back, and then I'll work it towards you. I don't care, whatever it is. You're supposed to protect the people of the United States of America, not be the person who attacks them. Anyways, we have a lot of work to do, and I know we can get it done. And I don't say that as just a. I'm not that rah person. Well, it depends. But I really, we really need to get voting rights and the infrastructure package, and then take on McConnell once the Selects Committee is done, because they aided and abetted a coup, and they're still aiding and abetting a coup, and they're betting that African Americans and the Democrats and the coalition don't have enough guts to hold them to account.